Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Thomas, and I am the superintendent with Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening and or watching it back this evening, and those of you who ventured out on this one of the last beautiful fall evenings as well. So this evening I'll be walking through our State of the District. It's really my opportunity to connect with our community to let them know how we're launching the school year. A lot of our staff have seen many of these slides, but it's also our opportunity to share with our public just what our vision is moving forward, what are our key strengths and opportunities, as well as areas of focus for the year. And so with no further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. I always like to start off with a couple of our leadership teams. This evening we've got a couple of our board directors here with us tonight, but we've got an amazing group of individuals who volunteer many hours of their time to provide governance to this district and throughout our community. So I can't thank our board enough for all the work and the hours that they put in to support the efforts that really are instrumental to ensuring that our students and our families have a positive experience here in our district. Additionally, I work with a fantastic leadership team. Some of those members are here this evening, and on the screen you see the individuals who touch every aspect of our organization. Whether it's human resources or continuous improvement or community education, I am really lucky to work with a talented group of individuals each and every day, and thankful for the work that they do for our students and families as well. I always ground us in our mission, which is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. And I really focus on the ever-changing because we are going through significant change in this world. With the advances of continued technology, with our interconnectedness through technology, a lot of what our kids are experiencing day to day and what they'll eventually experience as they go off into the world as citizens is at a very rapid rate, and we want to make sure that we are relevant and responsive to the needs of our students. We are currently in the last year of our strategic plan, and we have a strong set of core values, we have a dynamic vision, and we have strategic directions. And I focus, since I've started here last year, I focused on two areas. One being our ability to increase those measurable student learning outcomes. This is our bread and butter. We want to make sure that our students are performing at levels that are going to prepare them for college, career, and general life readiness. And a lot of what we do, we want to ensure that that is our laser focus. This is a non-negotiable. And I share this with a lot of our staff, even folks that might be in our business office processing payroll each and every week. I want them to understand that their function, albeit here at the central office, has a direct through line to a student sitting in one of our classrooms. It's that critical that everybody understands we do our work in support of what is best for our students in terms of their outcomes. I would also say that we want to engage our students, parents, and families and our community to strengthen a culture of respect and inclusion. We have lived through many challenging times in this world, and we will continue to face adversity as we continue forward. But what we can control is how we meet adversity. And I think that's a critical attribute of who we are as Prior Lake Savage Area Schools. We are a community school system. We want to make sure that we are bringing our community into our schools. We have deep partnerships with our families, local community businesses, etc. And we want to make sure that we're doing this and embodying in the spirit of respect for one another. It's absolutely critical to the success. The levels of division and divisiveness and tearing each other down, that gets us nowhere, and it does nothing to model that for our students each and every day. So we want to make sure that as adults throughout our community, in our district, that we are modeling that culture of respect and inclusion where everybody finds a place at the table. We are a vast district of elementaries, middle schools, high schools, specialty programs. We have an alternative learning center. We have pre-K, early childhood programs, and that spans a vast area. We have about 58 languages spoken. in our district, and down here you'll see some of the dominant languages that are spoken, and these are growing languages that we are seeing, particularly with the recent events happening with the Ukraine. We are seeing more and more of our Russian-speaking, Slavic-speaking families choosing Prior Lake Savage area as a primary resettlement area. So that is something that we are closely monitoring and actually bolstering support to add additional liaison supports so that our families who do speak Russian and Slavic can overcome various language barriers, cultural barriers, et cetera, coming into our district. And that goes for anyone. We have about 8,629 students. That number was just finalized with the state of Minnesota October 1. And we are, give or take, about 20 plus students from where we ended last school year. So we are up a little bit this year, which is good. We have about 1,300 staff members between our licensed staff and our paraprofessional staff. And we, like I said earlier, have about 15 schools that span pre-K, early childhood, all the way up through high schools. With regards to our enrollment, you can see that we've had fairly steady, flat enrollment over the course of the past 5 years or so. Quite a while back, we had some significant growth that was occurring within this general community. And since about 1920, we've been kind of flat and slightly declining, actually. And as we've had different conversations with our board and our community with regards to our local and state demographers, we are seeing that Minnesota is becoming an aging state. More and more individuals in that retirement age are populating the state, and we're seeing fewer and fewer childbirths each year. And when we do have childbirth, we are seeing many families choosing to have children at much later years. I was just recently talking with our Prior Lake City manager about a new apartment complex that's going up, and it's going to be a market rate apartment complex over by the YMCA, and he said it's going to be about a third, a third, and a third. You know, about a third of individuals who are the millennials just coming in for their first homes, and we are seeing about a third of divorcees where we might have a parent who is living at the apartment while another primary parent is staying in the previous family home, and a student going in between. And then a third of those who are just downsizing and they're done with having to cut grass, garden, and maintain a large house, and so they're going to the apartment. So not sure whether or not we'll get school-age children, new school-age children that will be attracted to that. We might have some that are existing, like I said, going maybe in between co-parenting, but that is something that we're tracking and watching. We do have thousands of acres of undeveloped land, primarily in Prior Lake, and then some of our townships surrounding us as well. Savage is pretty much built out, and so we'll just be doing revival housing there. But we're closely watching, and we're seeing this more and more in some of the papers, our local paper as well as some of the St. Paul Pioneer Press and the Strib, where some of our smaller townships, namely for us, Credit River, we are seeing kind of some of the challenges of growth, and those townships wanting to maintain a certain type of identity, but with more families moving out of the metro area, going into maybe our traditional second and third ring suburbs or townships, that's demanding more and more housing. And so how do you balance maintaining that small township feel with a booming interest in housing units and residential occupancy as well? So something for us to watch. And I think another, Kirsty, who's here tonight, can probably attest to this. We've seen various articles coming out with regards to K-12 education. One of the fastest growing positions that we're seeing emerging in school systems are marketing strategists, because in a choice state like Minnesota, with a flat demography of school-aged children, we're all vying for trophy fish out of a small guppy pond. And so families have a lot of choices, whether it's private schools, charter schools, various public school districts, home schools, et cetera. How do we make sure that we are offering an experience in Prior Lake Savage area schools that's going to attract our local demographic and perhaps those beyond our local demographic as well? And so we're doing our best to ensure that we are listening to the needs of our families who are currently with us, and also doing exit surveys on families who are not choosing us, or who haven't chosen us, or who are not continuing to choose us, as to what we can do to improve the experience here at Prior Lake Cyber Area Schools to bolster that enrollment. A little hard to control though, because we don't make babies in our district. We got to have those come to us. So, school funding is something that's also top of mind. I don't think there's a week that goes by without this topic hitting the front page of some news channel or some print news media. And it is something very recent for us, where Minnesota has gone through a significant legislative cycle where they made historic investments in K-12 and E-12 education. Now, with that said, a significant amount of those resources that came into public education came by way of categorical funding, which means it can only be used for certain aspects of the school experience. And so we very much appreciate the investments, for example, around special education or English language learning education or the Universal Meals Program. All those came with significant investments. But that doesn't allow a district to have great flexibility in meeting the needs of all students. So when we talk about funding, we think about kind of two primary buckets. We have categorical funding, such as what I just mentioned, and then you have general funding, which really gives you the most flexibility of how a district and a local community might choose to use those resources. So for us, I would say about 75% of that funding that came into the state of Minnesota in our public school systems landed in that categorical bucket with a lot of restrictions on how and where it can be used. So this is why you're seeing in this current cycle many, I think there's about the most in I think Minnesota's history in one session. We have about 44 school districts going for a referendum next month. That's an astonishing amount of districts, and that number will continue to grow. And I think that's a big conversation with communities. How do you balance the big state news of big investment in K-12 education in Minnesota with the amount of referendum that are showing up at the ballot each November? So I do want to play this little clip here for you all, which I think does a good summarization of how school funding operates.
In 2023, as a result of a large budget surplus, the Minnesota legislature approved significant funding for schools. But there's more to this story beyond the headlines. With the new state funding, there were also new mandates, adding new expenses for our schools. School funding is complex, with most revenue coming through a combination of state aids and locally collected property taxes. The majority of our district's revenue comes from the state in the form of general education aid. We also receive funding for specific categories, but we can only spend that money on the category it was allotted for. In other words, just because the state is providing us with more dollars doesn't mean we can use those dollars wherever we like. The remaining revenue for our district comes from local tuition and fees, federal grants, and local property taxes. The largest portion of our budget goes toward paying our teachers and staff. Our people are our biggest asset and our most significant expense. Our budget also has to cover other things, such as curriculum, technology, transportation, operations, maintenance, and administration. The state mandates some of our spending for things like special education services and certain required courses. But many state mandates do not include enough money to pay for them, so we have to take money from other important budgets to cover those mandates. Other factors that impact how we spend money include inflation, class size ratios, aging buildings, emerging technology, and the specific needs of our students. And while we work hard to balance our budget every year, sometimes unexpected factors can make a significant impact. When we find ourselves in a situation where the needs of our students are outpacing the funding we receive from state and local taxes, we may go to our community with a referendum to ask for additional funding. Each year, we tackle the challenge of balancing all of these funding sources and expenses to build an effective budget. School budgets can be complicated, but what isn't complicated is our commitment to using our resources wisely on behalf of our students. We strive to be good stewards of the resources our communities have entrusted to us, while putting the needs of our students first. By working together, we can keep our schools and our community strong.
So that gives you a little snapshot of what's happening with regards to our school funding, and that is something that we will eventually continue to have conversations with in our district, is how do we maximize the resources that we have so that our students are getting the best experience that's going to prepare them for college, career, and life readiness. You heard this statistic in there about 80 plus, 80 to 83% or so of school budgets are staff. Staff are the programs, and so in a budget like ours, at about $125 million, you take 80% of that and put it into supporting the people who run all the programs. That leaves very little discretionary resources. So it's not like we have a lot of fat to kind of negotiate around. We really want to make sure that we are maximizing every penny in such a lean environment so that we can ensure that our students have the best. And one of the things we want to do and continue to strive for is our ability to be very transparent with our community. There are folks in our community who are accountants by training, and this is their passion, and they dream to crunch numbers on data dashboards about school budgets. And then there are some folks who really have no clue about funding and everything in between. Well, we took that into account to make sure that, and we have what will be it's a public-facing online dashboard on our finance page, where any person in our community, any staff member, any parent, any business owner could come through, pull up, and take a look at how our revenues and our expenditures are being accounted for. You can do this at a district level, whether it's a department, and or if you want to look at a school level, you could also do that. And then just a little illustration here, we have a pie chart that kind of breaks it out of how is that money being spent. This is really important so that our community understands how the resources we receive are being allocated to ensure that our students and our staff are receiving the best support possible. So again, this is a new feature for us. We'll continue to take feedback as we perfect this online dashboard. And I believe we'll be pushing out more of an advertisement around this. We were actually waiting for our audit to be complete, but that was yesterday. And so with that now being behind us, we can make sure all the numbers are adjusted appropriately based upon the audit, which was a very clean audit, and then allow our families and our community members to interact with that dashboard. In the wake of what we unfortunately continue to see on the news reels is that school environments find themselves dealing with safety issues, whether it's our E12 campuses or higher ed campuses. Schools in general and universities are falling victim to some really horrific events. And as a parent myself, it's something that is always top of mind for me. And even though my kids are off at university, I also know that they still have to deal with some of these challenges. Our kids in our K-12 system, they still have to deal with some of the challenges of safe learning environments or violence in communities and how that might spill over into our schools. So we take safety very seriously here in Prior Lake Savage Area Schools. And we just recently partnered with CISA, our Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and our Department of Homeland Security to come through last June or so to do a safety audit, comprehensive safety audit. And that was an amazing experience for us and kind of an eye-opening experience. So when you bring in those trained professionals who know what to look for, who know how to find breaches in what we might think is a really good system, you would be surprised at some of the things that they are able to uncover. And so I think it's critically important for our community to understand this is something that we do on a regular basis. So whether it's these formal agencies or partners that we have with consultants to try to do penetration tests on our IT systems to see if they can hack into it, all those things are continually happening to ensure that we are maintaining safe perimeters both around our physical campuses as well as kind of what's happening in terms of technology, cloud servers, et cetera. So a couple of recommendations that came from that most recent walkthrough audit last June, and that is how do we tighten our visitor management and how do we tighten our site access controls. And our current access controls is having locked doors into kind of a designated vestibule to get us into the office, having doorbells or buzzers in those vestibules for us to get access into those offices, and then making sure that all of our schools are locking that main office door so that we have a buffer and creating that opportunity for our staff to allow members of our community, staff, parents, students, et cetera, come into those school campuses. In our SAFE project here, this is also something that we are in process of doing, and that is this comprehensive upgrade to the systems that I just mentioned. And again, making sure that we have those locked exterior doors. And I will say that this is a point of conversation for us because we have to balance the notion of being welcoming to our community, but also keeping our school environment inside safe. And if that means that there needs to be a perimeter access point where I have to buzz, not unlike your home, your residence, where you might hit a doorbell, a ring doorbell, and we see something pop up, we are looking at the commercial version of that as well to ensure that our front office staff can see who's actually trying to gain access to our school systems. But that's one of the upgrades that we're doing. Two-way intercoms, again, not unlike what many of us have at our homes with rings, we can have a conversation with who might be trying to gain access into that building. Door control buttons, so that if I'm sitting at the front office desk, I have the ability to not have to move and leave, thus creating a vacancy in this area to be occupying another space. I can maintain this area and electronically allow someone to pass through. And then as well as like panic buttons, et cetera. So if something should, become extremely concerning, we have the ability to trigger, support immediately. And then lastly, guidelines to provide support around these changes. And I say changes because that's a scary word for many educators. As we go through various iterations of change, and several of us were having conversations with the board last night when we went into our Raptor ID system where you put in your driver's license and it prints out a tag to say, yeah, this was Michael. That was a point of conversation. Not a lot of people like that. They felt it was too impersonal. It took too much time, and families didn't feel welcome. Now, I think a family would be a little bit surprised as to why they wouldn't have to be screened coming in or to present some type of identification to demonstrate that, yes, this is me. So time will allow us to be implementing safer procedures and protocols, and with that time will come that balance of that warm and welcoming environment. School safety is not just about our bricks and mortars, but it's about everything behind the bricks and mortars. We have seen far too many cases nationally, as well as some big ones locally, where we have cyber attacks that are happening. And more bad actors, as some of our colleagues like refer to them, are targeting schools. And the reason being is that schools, unlike maybe the Fortune 100 private sectors, may not have comparable security systems, cybersecurity, firewalls, et cetera. So they know that that might be a vulnerability. In addition to that, we are dealing with the lives of young people. If you gain access to very private information about young people, that organization is more inclined to protect the young. And so whatever the ransom might be, that's typically the payout that comes. And so we know this is becoming more of a trend that we're seeing in the cybersecurity space. And so, we are taking our efforts to ensure that we are updating our cybersecurity systems, filter systems, content filtration, passwords, et cetera. And like I said earlier, some of our own penetration tests, or we might even send out spoof emails just to see, how trained are our staff? Will they click and open, kind of the staged email that we embed with a, hey, you clicked the wrong link that you shouldn't have clicked. So we have that opportunity to do some training. All of that is continually happening because we want to build that habit of mind where our staff understand that not only are they physically safe, as well as our students and community, but they're not just physically safe, but all of our devices that we have are also safe, and that we're not going to have to worry about getting hacked or maybe inappropriate content, et cetera, that's coming on a school-owned device. So I start with that because that's a lot of behind the scenes. And we couldn't do anything front stage, kind of in front of that curtain, without having that solid. And I always say it doesn't matter how dynamic of a teacher you are or how many hours you put into that lesson plan. If our school environments are not conducive, safe, warm, welcoming environments, kids are not going to plug and play. Our families aren't going to plug and play. So we want to make sure all of that is solid because that's what really helps drive our academics. So when we take a look at our academics here in Prior Lake Savage area schools, we can see, and this here is looking at some of our MCA reading, we can see that we have opportunities to grow. We are hovering right around 60% with regards to literacy skills. Now this is a conversation that's happening statewide. We know that many of our students, by way of looking at MCA data, are not performing at levels that would be aligned to being proficient or to compete. And so we want to make sure that what we are doing as a state, as well as what we're doing here locally, is really going to bolster the level of literacy, comprehension, decoding skills, all those basic fundamentals so that our kids graduate literate and ready to compete from that standpoint. And this is a big push, this past legislation. They've passed the READ Act. And with that READ Act, there will be conversations around how do we embrace a universal kind of statewide model for training for our teachers, where every teacher sees themselves as a literacy teacher, as a reading teacher. And there's core elements of where we want to have that interdisciplinary approach as well, where I might be a science teacher, but I'm going to make sure that I'm incorporating literacy standards and practices into my science. There's also a lot of writing and math. And I say, yes, writing and math. There's lots of it. Whenever I go out to our students and talk with them about the importance of reading, I said, reading is something you'll do for the rest of your life. Whether it's a book, whether it's traffic signals, or whether it's that big fat contract that you get when you become rich and famous somewhere. You gotta know how to read, and you'll be doing it every single day. It's a life skill. So we want to make sure that we are preparing our students and getting them ready for that. Now, several years ago, we saw this trend, as you can see, from 2019. Now, granted, we are going through that era of COVID, and that's a reality, but that doesn't excuse us from what we need to do moving forward. And we adopted a new foundations curriculum for K-3 because we could see the pattern that was occurring, not only with MCA, but also some of our internal formative data as well. And so we implemented a new phonics program called Foundations, and this year we were able to see evidence that this early literacy investment is making a significant impact on our students. So our second graders, who were the first cohort of kindergartners who received this for now 3 years, and we demonstrated this last year actually at one of our board meetings. I think it was Five Hawks that came out and demonstrated a little bit about this Foundations. But we saw in 2 years' time, those students made about 14% gains in their proficiency with regards to literacy skills. That is significant. You can expect about a 3% growth rate on many academic measures, but to get 7% each year, roughly, to a total 14%, that tells us this is actually having an impact. And there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of professional development, so that we are starting strong at this foundational level to building up those skills that will eventually cascade all the way through our K-12 experience here in Prior Lake Savage Area schools. Now, we can say the same with math. Yet another opportunity that we have before us, and we can see this was happening long before this year. And again, I acknowledge the challenges that existed with COVID, but COVID cannot be an excuse for what we know we need to do to ensure that we can address and impact those numbers. If we can do it for literacy, we can do it for math. And if we can do it for math, we can do it for science. We can do it for any content area. You know, that which matters gets measured and we see it grow. And that's what we're intending to do with our math this year. Just starting our new Bridges math curriculum. And I've got to tell you, when I've been going out on my Mondays and Fridays, going through our schools, walkthroughs, and engaging with our students, I've really been going to observe what's happening, particularly when I'm at our elementaries, what's happening with regards to Bridges. And I can tell you, and I've seen, you know, as an educator, you've seen various iterations of math curricula come through the ranks. As a parent, I've watched and had to coach my own kids through various math instructional models. And I think we heard one of our parents at a recent meeting saying, hey, it gets to a certain point where you got to get your dad, or, you know, I'm tapped out, right? I mean, there's only so much that, you know, we can say and do as parents, perhaps. But this Bridges math has a strong student grounding component. It's got a strong at-home support parent, you know, component, or caregiver, whomever might be in the home with that student. And coming up in November, I think it's November 9th, we'll be hosting at our schools opportunities for our families to come in and do a little in-service with this Bridges math curriculum so that we can help deepen that experience for our parents. Again, parents are our students' first and foremost teachers. If we can give them some of those skill supports at home alongside what we're doing in the classroom, that's only going to help our students' experience with this new math curriculum. And again, we can't statistically substantiate this at this point to say that there's some causation, but what we typically see is that when we implement a new curriculum, you typically see some dips that occur. It's a new thing. People struggle to either deliver it and or receive it if I'm a student, and then we begin to see that scaffolding of the proficiency grow again. Some of our pilot classrooms last year, we saw some significant growth with regards to math with some of our MCAs and our internal formative measures. So that's a good proxy to say we've got something that shows promise. Again, we can't say it's causation. This is our first year of a full-blown implementation. You know, Jenny, who's here, who leads our continuous improvement efforts for the district, this is something that we'll watch very closely. And I can't stress enough, and this is really a message to our staff, consistency of implementation is going to be absolutely key. It takes about 2 to 3 years for an organization, a district, school, whatever, to be able to see the impacts of such a significant change, particularly as it pertains to curriculum. So we're excited for this. I'm hearing nothing but a lot of positives around this new math curriculum. I rolled up my sleeves with one of our elementary schools recently and began to unpack units of instruction and got in with the teacher conversations. And I'm telling you, staff are really appreciative of this new curriculum. So I'm excited to see how the same kind of gains that we saw with some of that early foundations work will show promise here with math. Simultaneously, we are looking at a parallel math opportunity at the middle school level. So that aligns very much with Bridges, so that as students continue to graduate through the Bridges curriculum at the elementary, they will go into an aligned middle school curriculum. And then ultimately what we're looking at right now is our sequence of math instruction at the high school level. Do we have opportunities to have better alignment of when courses are offered that will set students up for success? Are we missing an opportunity for a course to be offered at an earlier grade level so that by the time they get to maybe 11th and 12th grade, they are able to compete with that higher level, calculus, et cetera. So those are some of the sequences that we're looking at, albeit not in a curricular adoption, but it's all tied together as what happens at elementary has ripple effects for our secondary tiers as well. As I stated, science is something that, I'll just be very honest, this has me wondering. Very similar to what we've been doing with the curriculums with math and reading, this is also an area for us that we're adopting new standards recently, but also now new curricula, new resource materials for our staff. As an E-STEM district, this is something that we've prided ourselves on for many, many years. And it's something I believe we still can pride ourselves on, but we have a great opportunity here with regards to science and how we can really begin to show a different way of how we can engage our students around the sciences so that they are ready to take high-level science courses by the time they're going into high school, your chemistries and physics, et cetera. So that's really important to us here as a district. And so as a community, and I guess I'll just appeal to many of our folks in our community that are tied and dialed more into those sciences, this is a great opportunity for us to be partners in this conversation, how we might be able to leverage some of your expertise to coming into our school systems, working with some of our staff, helping us find better ways that we can disrupt this trajectory of declining science scores since around 21 coming out of COVID to bring those back up to where we had them pre-COVID. Looking at our ACT scores and proxies for college readiness, if you will, you can see that we're getting close to where we were at just before the pandemic back in 19. So not far away. Clearly, things took a dive during some of that challenging time, but this is something that our high school was very adamant on tracking. So what they're very interested in is figuring out how we can set our students up for greater success with regards to our ACTs. And so this year, we're focusing more on how we can build out our 9th or 10th grade pre-ACT, PSAT preparations so that by the time they're taking this in high school for that official college entrance exam score, we'll have ample time for our students to demonstrate the ability to practice as well as do their best on that ACT. And I'll just say with all the measures that I've just shared with you, the ACT or the MCAs, these are single point in time measures, albeit very important. They are singular aspects of data. We need to look at this data along with multiple other data points to really triangulate and get that holistic picture of how our students are performing. And so know that we have this type of data, which tends to be our summative data, but then we also host an array of assessments, some of them teacher-driven, some of them universal with our FastBridge screeners as well as our formatives that we deliver so that we can have in time, kind of in the moment opportunities to see, hey, how are our students performing in maybe 6-week cycles so that we have opportunities to change our instruction or offer interventions or offer that acceleration when kids already know the content so that they're not just sitting in class bored. That's where we have made some significant investments with some of our differentiation specialists so that we're helping teachers scaffold across a wider array of our learners, knowing we've got some that need catch-up and some who really need to hit that gas going forward. We still have high graduation rates. This is something we are very proud of. And I think it's something we can be proud of, and as you've heard me say, data doesn't give you answers, it makes you ask more questions. And my more questions around graduation rates are trying to reconcile some of those summative point-in-time measures being where they're at. How can this hold true at such a high level? And so I want to find ways that we can look through our improvement efforts of our kids when they graduate. What does that first year of college experience look like for those who go on to college? Because we know still here, sorry, they kind of go all over the place. Oops. I don't have my notes here of how many go where, but we have a large portion, 86% of our kids who go on to 2 or 4 year colleges. So what I'm interested in looking at, and this will be some future data points, is when they go off to school, for example, what's the aggregate GPA of that graduating class? When we track those kids in their first freshman year of college, what's the aggregate GPA of that freshman cohort of kids who graduated from Prior Lake and have gone off to a variety of schools. Now, I know it's not going to be apples to apples because every university and college might be a little different, but it gives us yet another data point. I think another thing that we can be looking at is how many remedial courses are our students taking as freshmen in college that they should have been taking in high school? Is that number going up? Is that number going down? Are we flat? I mean, those are some other additional data points that would help round out the story about how these point-in-time scores that I've just referenced, juxtaposed to high graduation rates, ultimately to that college experience. And that's where you hear me talk about that life readiness. Because after that freshman year, the world's got them. There's not a lot that we have kind of direct control over or access to, and it gets too far removed from our lived experience here. But I think we've got some opportunity to kind of bridge some of that gap to tell a more robust picture about how our students are performing at that that college level. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the programs in our district. As I mentioned earlier, we're an E-STEM district, so we really pride ourselves on that environmental STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and how many of our campuses have access to outdoor learning environments. Recently, we had the Three Rivers Park District, and this happens every year, where we have teams of naturalists come out to our schools to take the learning of the classroom and apply it to real-world experiences. We've had partnerships with the Watershed District and other entities that allow our kids to get that hands-on learning and really apply that deep level of learning as well. So this is something that exists in all of our campuses, and some of them do have that access to beautiful grounds right outside the school walls. MNCAPS, our Center for Advanced Professional Studies, and this is those career pathways. We are finding many of our students are looking for opportunities that are that traditional 2 or 4 year college route, but we also have families and students who are looking for opportunities to go straight into the workforce. This is an amazing opportunity for kids who are on either. If you want to go to college, if you want to go right into the workforce, doing this, if you're going to college, will allow you to say, hey, was design marketing in that business track something that I really wanted to go to college for? Or did I find, after going through that, my heart and passion is actually becoming a veterinarian. Good thing I learned that while I was in high school versus spending thousands of dollars my freshman year of college, maybe my sophomore year of college, to say, oh, this is what I want to do. So great opportunities for our students to explore maybe some higher education pathways that they would like to pursue at the collegiate level, and or if I have a passion and want to go right into the workforce, and or if I want to go into the workforce to save money to eventually go to college one day, or maybe that employer will help pay for my college one day, I have an opportunity to explore a variety of different areas. For example, I met one of our young students just the other day who started a car detailing business right here locally in Prior Lake. This student's ready to graduate and go off and start marketing to Walters and all these other dealerships to try to get business to detail the cars on their lot as a contract. At that age, I don't think I want to say what I was thinking and planning to do because I don't think I even knew what I wanted to do. These kids are ready to take on the world from a professional business standpoint. So very impressed with what our students are doing at MNCAPS. I also spent time yesterday in our education pathways. We have 30 students who are in the education pathway at MNCAPS. And they all did poster sessions yesterday where they had to research various jobs that exist in education and then share about what those jobs are and then what their passion is. And one of our students happened to do her research on being a superintendent. So I went to her poster session and I said, convince me this is a job I still want to do. So she did a great job. She did a great job. And many of our students in that pathway, and all the pathways, quite honestly, are so passionate about that work. It's hands-on. They're in our classrooms. They're shadowing teachers. They're doing some before and after school care with our students. It's a great opportunity for our students. So again, I really can't speak more highly about MNCAPS. I think this is just going to be a growing market in our district. We have our Spanish immersion program at La Ola del Lago. And this is a great opportunity for our families who want to have their students go through their E12 experience and graduate bilingual and have both a diploma as well as a bilingual seal on their diploma. And it's a great opportunity for them to start in a 90-10 split model where pretty much all your instruction coming into kindergarten is going to be in Spanish. And by the time you get into about 5th grade, you're going to be at that 50-50 rank. And then you'll work your way all the way throughout high school and taking those advanced language courses at high school. And this year we have our first freshman cohort. This is our inaugural cohort. So they have been our trial and tribulation group of students. But with 40 plus students that are in that cohort, I think at the high school, Dan, give or take? 30, thank you. 30 students at that cohort. These kids are competing. And our Spanish teachers at the high school clearly can distinguish this was our immersion student, and this is, just our pure Spanish language, student who's taking that as an elective. So great opportunity for our kids to become bilingual. And again, I say this often, America is one of the countries that primarily graduates a lot of students in a singular language experience. Many countries around the world, students are graduating speaking 3 or 4 different languages as the norm. And so if our kids want to globally compete, which we know this world, it gets smaller and smaller with the advancement of technology, having this as a life skill is going to be a critical aspect for their success. I mentioned earlier that we have students who need some additional support, and we also have many of our students who are coming to us already knowing significant amount of content, and they need significant advancement and acceleration. And Sage Academy allows us to do that. This is where we are getting our students who are gifted education students who need a very different experience. Albeit some of the curriculum being the same, some of the supplemental, the advanced novels, the literature, the grade advancement, those aspects are baked into this opportunity for our students who are assessed to be gifted, for them to get the type of experience for them to continually excel. And I always push us to say, we don't focus on kids who are just struggling. When kids are at mastery, improvement can always occur. It's harder, it's more challenging, and it's not as noticeable, but just because you're getting all A's doesn't mean we forget about you. And that's something that's really, really important for our community to understand. We serve a broad range of learners, and those who sit at the highest level of learners, coming in as a kindergartner, but maybe reading at a first, second grade level, or a second grader reading at a 5th grade level, that's not uncommon here in Prior Lake Savage Area Schools. And it's our obligation to make sure that we're meeting them with that challenge and that rigor that they're demanding from us. I would also say that this skill set, albeit maybe not identified or assessed as gifted, we might have students who get identified, but they don't want to leave their home school. So how do we support them successfully in their neighborhood school versus moving them to Sage Academy? And that's where that role of differentiation specialist that I mentioned comes into play, where we're working with our teachers to help them ratchet up those instructional skills so that they can meet that broad range of learners that come into their classrooms each and every day. And then lastly, I'll talk about our community education. This is a very unique opportunity because this is where lots of folks who don't have kids in our school system have opportunities to interact with our school system. So whether it's an adult or youth class, we have tons of opportunities to engage various curricular interests that you might have. So if it's a sewing or a cooking or a knitting class, or maybe it's some of a youth self-defense class or a computer coding class, we have a wide array of opportunities for our community to engage here at Prior Lake Savage Area Schools by way of our community education. I would also say this is where our community can really join in and bring your expertise into that instructional realm. So maybe you're not a classroom teacher, but you're an engineer by design, and you want to teach a class on Legos and building structures and systems, and you're incorporating math skills and all that kind of stuff. Well, hey, community ed has an opportunity for you to come on in and offer to teach, a Lego engineering class. It's a good idea. Any engineers out there? Come on in, Lego engineering classes. So that's just an example. Or if you love to cook and you want to share some of your cooking skills and talents and help other young people or others in our community, inspire them to become cooks as well, that's an opportunity for you to come in and teach a class. We also have a lot of before and after school programs. Many of our families who are working, earlier morning and they need that before school care or that after school care while their jobs might extend and cross over the school day. Here's an opportunity for you to come in and fill some of those kind of before and after school gaps as well, so that we can have support and play and learning opportunities for our young ones as their parents are finishing or beginning their work day. I talked earlier about continuous improvement, and this is something that is really important to us because we are not a stagnant organization. We are continually looking for ways to get better and improve, and a lot of this comes by getting feedback from our stakeholders. And our primary stakeholders that we really try to listen to are our students, our families, and our staff. And that is something that we've recently partnered with a new organization called Student Education, and they are helping us with our stakeholder experience surveys. And so we had thousands of individuals throughout our community take this survey. And what we have here this evening and what you can play back is some of the areas of strength and some of the areas of challenge. So where we have opportunities to improve how our students, for example, experience our district. And this is kind of on a 1 through 5 Likert scale, 1 being not so much or not very strong, 5 being very strong. And so you can see the correlation of numbers there. And generally what we're seeing, and as we continue to peel back the layers of this one, is that our student experience generally is very positive, where we can see our employee experience and then ultimately our family experiences, they're not as high as our students. And so we're trying to reconcile how the adult culture feels one way about the same experience and very similarly worded questions, while our students are saying, hey, this is great, generally speaking. So again, it doesn't give us answers, it gives us some, I wonder what that's about kind of thoughts. And our opportunity to focus in. So as building principals, for example, they've shared all this information with their school communities when they've done their state of their school addresses and talked about their strengths and some of these challenge areas. So if I'm a principal and I see I have the opportunity to provide input and decisions that affect my job not being so high, as a building principal, I want to know, hey, what are my staff saying to me? Am I not engaging them? Am I being too autocratic? How can I engage my building instructional leadership team, or how can I engage my parent advisory committee, or as a superintendent, how do I make sure I'm getting participation from staff on key committees that are advising my work and the board's work? So those are the types of actions that we can take based upon the feedback that we receive from our stakeholder data. And I can't stress enough to our staff and our families and our students, data is developmental. This is not an opportunity for you to weaponize your lived experience and throw daggers at the superintendent's back or the teacher's back or whatever, right? This is your opportunity to speak from your heart to say, here's my experience and here's what I might be looking for that could be different. And take it in that spirit, because that allows us to take appropriate action. And again, speak your truth, but I just invite our staff and our families and our students to make sure that you are actually taking this for the right purpose and the right intent, that the change that has to happen involves the people who are actually filling out the survey. So know that, be willing to roll up your sleeves to join with us to celebrate, but also to dig in where we have opportunities to grow together as a community and as a district. And then lastly, I'll say, this is a great place to work. We are always looking for top talent to join Prior Lake Savage Area Schools. It's an amazing organization that has a hyper-focus on supporting staff, that has a hyper-focus on how we balance our work roles and our personal roles. And we have a hyper focus on our students. And if you are someone in our community that wants to join that kind of a team, that has that kind of a focus, that wants to support and nurture and ensure you are balanced as an individual, then this is the district that you want to choose. And I cannot speak highly enough, of our staff that are here tonight, our board members that are here tonight, the students I get to interact with every day, the business and elected officials I get to interact with. I mean, this is an amazing community, and we sit right in the middle of it as an educational institution right here in Prior Lake Savage Area Schools. So please make sure you go to our website, take a look at the various opportunities that exist, and come on board and help us make a difference in the lives of our young people. And if you already have a job and you just don't have any more hours in your life to give professionally, there's other ways that you might want to volunteer. So perhaps you want to become a coach. Perhaps you want to, come out and have fun at Friday Night Lights and enjoy a good football game. You want to see a great play. Grease is our fall play, by the way, so be sure to check that out in November. Or next Monday, I believe, a phenomenal concert coming up with our choir. So opportunities for you to come out and involve and support what's happening in our schools, because that also makes a difference when our students and our staff see our families, see our community members coming to our events, supporting the great work that's happening here in our district. So there's many ways that you can get involved as a spectator and or if you just want to volunteer some time as well. And I just want to thank everyone for choosing Prior Lake Savage Area Schools. I am biased, I know, but this is the best district in the Southwest Metro. And I know there's a lot of opportunities for our families, for our staff, and for members in our community to engage with. And I just thank each and every one of you for choosing us. And I look forward to the work that we'll continue to do on behalf of these wonderful young people each and every day. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.